I'm Kellie Winsanowicz. I'm with Academy of Embodiment Arts and Aligned Embodiment, Sacred Body Literacy. And that is my own personal practice of where I help people using techniques like hypnotherapy, but other energy healing and also other emotional work techniques to clear emotional, mental, and physical blockages or blockages in our energy field. So I work with people on different levels to optimize their physical and emotional health. And this presentation is adapted from a presentation that I gave to our local chapter of the International Association of Counselors and Therapists on aligned embodiment and what I offer to people. And I'm going to start off by giving you a little bit of background about myself and how I got to this place in my life and how I'm working with people. So, my love affair with the human body began a long time ago when I was a gymnast. And I was a gymnast from the age of 6. And I went through recreational programs and got into competitive when I was around 11. And then I got into elite gymnastics, where I traveled as part of the Manitoba team for Western Canadian Championships and also national championships. So I was on a track to go to Olympic level, and I never didn't make it that far. But I learned a lot of things along the way. And gymnastics to me was always one of those magical things because all the conditioning, the way you could train your body to swing around a bar or run and tumble or run and vault and do all these amazing things seemed like magic to me. So when I went into university, I floundered at first because I thought, well, I don't really know what to study because I love literature, I love the arts, and I went into that first. And then I transferred into physical education. So my degree is in what's now considered kinesiology, and it's the study of human movement. So I really enjoyed learning how all the different body systems work and how everything worked together and how our bodies are such amazing instruments of for movement and just keeping us alive every day. And I also felt like there was a few things missing in some of my education, which I discovered later. I also became a learning facilitator for the National Coaching Certification Program. I did that for quite a number of years, along with training athletes and coaching at the same time. I also became a coach evaluator. So I taught coaches how to be coaches and then evaluated them so they could get their certification. So I've been involved in this kind of work for a really long time. So my background, I have courses in anatomy, biology, kinesiology, and I've kept up with a lot of those things over the years, what's trending, what feels right, what really isn't. There's a lot of trending things sometimes that aren't true, especially if you don't have the background that I do, or if you haven't studied any of those things. And a lot of our education system doesn't really even teach a lot of these things anymore, that you're not required to have a basic biology. So I have a lot of knowledge about the human body in general that I use in my practices when I'm teaching Qigong, for example, to people, or learning Bagua, which is a Chinese internal art. So I love how the body works together. And there's a lot more talk these days about fascia, which I'll get into later. And so I'm just really fascinated with how the body works. And for me, then learning about energy healing later on was one of the key components that I felt that was missing, because I thought like our body generates energy. So how does this work, right? So I have a huge background in what the physical body does and quite a good understanding. And even myself, though I've trained in it and studied it a lot, there are other people who know more than me, and I still learn from other people who know more than I do about the physical body, because the physical body to me is so important, and so one of the keys to our healing and for being able to control our energy and to control our physical processes. Other things that I do, like I mentioned, I teach Qigong and energy mastery to people. There's different layers to our energy, and learning how to work with those and master those is really important. In my own training, I have received Reiki attunements, light weaving attunements. I've taken certification in spiritual coaching and life coaching. So I have a more rounded, and now I am a certified hypnotherapist. So I have a well rounded idea about how the mind, the emotions, and everything works together. When my oldest daughter was about a year old, I was diagnosed with what's called a molar pregnancy, and that's where the genetic material turns into a tumor rather than a baby. And I realized at that time in my life, I wasn't happy in my job. I thought that I had my dream job, and my dream job seemed to be so stressful and it just wasn't working out the way that I thought. And I was just feeling like I'm missing something in my life so I took some time off from my job and to process and also to recover from the surgery to remove the tumor. And I just felt really disconnected to myself. And I stumbled upon a show which featured Donna Eden. And she still does energy work today. And I bought her book, which was Energy Medicine. And so I studied that. And that was a key missing piece for me was understanding the body on an energetic level and learning about the meridians and the energy centers. And this is, her interpretation of how everything goes. But it was really one of the first things that catapulted me into that kind of thing, into energy work. Then I got into shadow work, which I've been doing for over 25 years, because that goes along with it. We need to understand our shadow and our ego, how they work together to also influence our light. They influence our behavior patterns. They try to keep patterns going, patterns that are holding us back. And when you understand all of that, you can understand how you can actually control yourself and your reactions and your actions. And you have much more conscious control over everything in your life and even manifesting all of the things that you want to do and the things that you want in your life. So eventually I did quit that job that I had. I chose to basically raise my family while still coaching a little bit, but I also became an award-winning author. I also write romance. I have a website for that. I have over 25 books published at this point. I may publish some more, but I had a couple of surgeries a few years ago. I've been kind of focusing on recovering from that and then building some of my other businesses as well. So my creative energy has been being used to actually create a new body and a new energy after the surgery. So instead of using it for creativity and writing, I've been using it for other things. So I am an award winning author. I also became a voice actor along the way. So I've had contract work and I still do contract work as a voice actor. And again, like I mentioned, I am also a certified hypnotherapist. Learning about energy, learning about how the physical body works and how everything works together has really been such a blessing for me because it's really helped me to understand how the mind works with the emotions and it works with the physical body and how it can get stuck in your energy field, how it's stuck in your tissues because we are energy first. And actually understanding how you are energy first is really important because a lot of people say it. It's almost a catchphrase these days. But it's very important to actually understand how you are energy first. And energy first really talks about the ATP cycle within the cells, within your mitochondria. That's adenosine triphosphate. You might even hear that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. That's because that is where energy is produced, and it's produced in a very specific way so that we can our function optimally. And when it's not functioning optimally, then there's a lot of systems in our body because everything is connected that may not work together. So, what drew me to hypnotherapy in general, you think with all this background that I might not need anything else. But what really attracted me to hypnotherapy is that upon working with energy, what I discovered is that when we are born here, we actually forget a large part of who we are. And it's part of the agreement that we have in incarnating here on Earth. And that might sound a little woo woo and out there, but it's actually that we do forget who we are in order to come here. And we sort of form these identities based on what our family tells us, what society tells us, and all of these things. And it's a process of then unraveling all of that to becoming more of who we are. So, in essence, we're kind of hypnotized into believing that we're a certain way or that this is how reality works. And through the process of hypnosis, you can actually then unhypnotize yourself to remember more of who you are. So that is why I really was drawn to working with hypnotherapy. And there is something called parts therapy that I did not invent. It was invented by hypnotherapists that came long before me, and where you go into the body and you ask your different body parts what kind of memories or emotions are maybe stuck there. And parts therapy and hypnotherapy in general gave me a framework to work with people more effectively. There's a lot of material out there. I have a great book, The Secret Language of the Body, that can help you discover what might be stuck in your tissues. But this way, when you actually go inside and ask your body what's happening there, you have the opportunity to claim your power, to ask your body the questions, and then to transform it on your own. So that process is, I hold space for it, but it's not guided by me necessarily. You are guiding yourself through that process, and it's so much more effective for people, I find. So my own experiences with parts therapy when I did it in class were that I thought, oh, I know what's happening in this hip of mine because I've been working on it for a while. And actually, so I volunteered to be the guinea pig to try it, because I always like to try things because then I know how it feels. I know how my clients are going to feel. So in particular with my hip, and then there was my shoulder, that there were memories that were stuck in there that I didn't recall because I was very, very young at the time. And that's what happens, that our subconscious will hold on to these memories and we are not consciously aware of them. And there's a lot that we're not consciously aware of. Our subconscious is working so much, so quickly, all the time, and we're conscious of very little of it. But the more you can become conscious of it, the more you can control your body's processes and subsequently your pain and the emotional way that you feel. And when you regulate those things, then your body will begin to regulate itself and it won't be so stressed out or want to repeat these patterns. So when I went into these body parts thinking that I knew what was going to come out, and then finding out that there were things there that I didn't realize, I thought, oh, this is a tool that can take people even deeper into their bodies. And that's what fascinated me even more, is that we have this entire inner world that we have yet to even explore. So here I'm going to back up just a little bit and go back to the physical body. That our physical bodies are made up of trillions of human cells, but also trillions of not so human cells that are viruses, bacteria, parasites, and fungi. And we're often told through media, commercials, or whatever, that all those things are so bad for us, but those things actually make up the microbiomes around each of our organs and our organ systems. So all of these things are actually very important for our health, and it's important to keep them in balance so that we are healthy. Because if we get an overgrowth of parasites, for example, we get sick. If we have an overgrowth of bacteria, we can get very sick. And while you can treat those things naturally, but also with pharmaceuticals, we need to try our best to keep those things in balance. And our bodies are amazing because we're not just a human. We're made up of all of these other things that work together to make up the person who's, sitting here today in front of you, or the person that you are in particular. And all of these different cells give up their individual identity to the whole to become the subconscious energy that run our body in the background. And they regulate our hormones, they regulate our nervous system, or they try their best to, but sometimes, depending on what we eat or where we live or what stressful environments we're in, we're affecting it all the time with other energy. And that system is continually trying to check and balance itself, but we need to be able to help that along. In quantum biology, there is this belief, and it's spreading, that all disease is a disease of misinformation. So when our bodies are not receiving the right kind of information, where maybe our heart's not receiving the right kind of information, our liver, our kidneys, our brain, if we're not receiving the right kind of information, that is where we create illness and disease and discomfort in our body. So this is very exciting for me, because what if you could speak to the parts of your body or the energy centers or energy in your body, and to find out what messages stuck and then rewrite it and have the information flowing correctly again? What if you could do that? How would this impact your overall health, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally? This is really exciting to me that we have so much more control over this than people think they do. That we think that aging is normal, that the way that we're aging is normal. I see commercials all the time these days for people being hurt and injured and sick and taking a lot of pills. But what if you had more control over your bodily functions if you could? So epigenetics is the study of how behaviors and environment affect how our DNA functions. 3% of the genetic code in our body tells our cells what to be, which means that it tells an eye cell that you're going to be an eye, or a liver cell that you're going to be a liver, etc., etc. 97% of our genetic code is adaptive, meaning that we can change how it functions. So if we could do that, that means that epigenetic changes are reversible and do not change the DNA sequence itself, but they change how the body reads a DNA sequence. This is really exciting because this is being studied, this is talked about a lot, and I think it's very exciting because this is energy medicine right down to the cellular level. So the mitochondria in your body create energy, and disruptions in the body decrease energy production. And since energy is neither created nor destroyed, it can be distorted, though, and transformed. So if we can distort it, we can also transform it so that it's more coherent and running properly. Emotional and mental energy influences our overall energy production. So if we're feeling overly emotional sometimes, or we're going through a grief process, this is why you feel tired, because this is where your energy is going. Your energy is going to that process while you process out all of these emotional feelings that you're going through. And that's a perfectly normal thing to have happen. Mental energy. Have you ever been in an office where all of a sudden you feel bombarded? Everybody's thinking so hard. It just feels tense. Your head hurts. Your mental energy, when it's locked down, also influences your overall energy production. So listening to and talking to the body are keys to your own transformation. So if you can learn the sacred language of your body, just and to hear what your body is saying, wow, what a game changer for everyone. So what if you could actually hear what your body has to say? What messages are stuck there? What trauma do you have stuck in your tissues? And sometimes it's not even really trauma. It's just we can have an injury. And at that moment in time that you had the injury, there might have been an emotional component or a mental component to it. And you treat the physical injury all the time, but because you're not getting at the emotional or the mental component, we can't change it. And you have what we call chronic pain. But what if you could do something about that chronic pain? And hypnotherapy has been effective for managing chronic pain for a long time, and there's many techniques to be able to do that. So speaking to your body and learning its language can really help you manage that chronic pain. I myself have gotten rid of some chronic pain. I completely got rid of it. And also, just to say that results may vary. It depends on how long you've had the pain. Maybe there's more than one message stuck in there. There's more than one issue that's causing the disruption in the energy to be able to flow freely. So, results vary depending on the person, but I know for me personally, I have been able to get rid of some chronic pain through working with these techniques, and then I no longer have them. And it's so wonderful to be able to move around without the pain. People are often surprised at the messages they find stuck in their body. And I know I was surprised with mine. I've had back pain gone too. I worked with somebody who had back pain for a really long time, and for the heck of it, they wanted to try it to see if it would do anything. So we had a session, and what happened was that they realized that it was a pain that would keep them safe from, rushing headlong into life too fast. It was trying to keep them safe. So every once in a while, when it felt like they were kind of rushing into things, their back would kind of seize up, or it would do this thing. And so they were able to transform that. And to my knowledge, they have not had the pain come back. I've also had anxiety transformed from someone's solar plexus that they'd been holding on to for a long time. I had another client who had eczema, and they had eczema in different parts of their body. And what they decided to do was to speak to each part of the body that had the eczema to see what messages were there. One part of the body had to say that it was angry, that they were holding on to anger, so it was irritated because there's anger that they didn't weren't getting rid of. The other one on the other arm was poking at them to remind them that they needed to be joyful and have fun and to play in their life. And so that was really interesting, that it wasn't necessarily about being angry or irritated, but it was about actually that they weren't being joyful enough. They needed to have more fun. And then they also had another place where on their throat where it was about their expression, where they needed to feel free to express themselves. That's why they would get itchy and irritated, because they weren't expressing themselves in a way that they felt comfortable with. And then around the eyes, they also had some, and it was about seeing life in a different way, or just reminding them that they could, that they were allowed to see life in a different way, that they didn't always had to see it in a certain way. And so I've witnessed some very beautiful transformations from this process, because we're able to influence what's happening in our body. And there are studies out that say trauma to the body can actually change your DNA. When I was talking about the epigenetic sequence, it's how the DNA is read, right? So if you heal that trauma, then you are affecting your DNA, you're affecting your mitochondria, you're allowing your body to work better. So again, what I do remind people of is that results will vary, and this technique may not be for everyone. So far, the people that have worked with it, they've had really good results. I shouldn't say they're my results, because it's not my results, it's their results. One client did have a beautiful transformation, and then a couple of days later, their shadow and ego was trying to convince them that it wasn't real, that it didn't happen. And we ended up doing a slightly different session. So it's another thing that I can change for people, is that if the session isn't working, we can choose other options and do other things that can also influence the energy and get things moving as well. It doesn't have to be through this technique, and it doesn't have to necessarily be with hypnotherapy. So when I'm working on clearing energy centers, for example, sometimes that's more of what people need, rather than going into a specific body part. And there are specific ways that we can do that as well. And also finding energy within the body. And it's very interesting to hear people describe their inner landscape. And our inner landscape, our inner world, is just as important as our outer one, because our body is the interface with the physical world and the spirit realm. And so the better we take care of this body, the clearer our energy fields are, the clearer and healthier our physical body is. It becomes much easier to connect with the spirit world and to be able to get the messages that we need from there, maybe from our guides or other people that have passed on, if we are clearer and we take charge of being clear in our energy. So I hope this gave you some information about what it is that I do, and why I'm so excited about it, and why I love sharing this with people, and I find this technique effective. And if you have any questions, please book a free consultation with me, and visit my website to check out more.